Launching a product on Amazon today is nothing like it was 5 years ago. Sellers are burning through cash, hoping to rank without a real strategy. But seven-figure brands don't rely on hope. They use a proven PPC launch system that gets them fast rankings and pays for itself within weeks, not months. So in this session, I'm revealing the exact blueprint that we have used to help seven-figure brands launch profitably. And that's without slashing prices or waiting for months to see results. So stick around, I'll break down how to structure your PPC campaigns from day one, how to use the proper match types and bidding strategy to get ranking fast, and how to use data-driven decisions to optimize for profitability. By the end of this, you'll know exactly how to launch a product on Amazon like a pro without wasting money on the wrong ads. Let's dive in. So, like I mentioned, I want to make sure I cover things that are working right now, right? So, the example I'm going to show you is a product that we launched uh, near the end of 2024. But nothing really changed that much ever since. I mean, there are certain, of course, Amazon is always changing things, but this applies to even today. That's why we're launching new products nowadays. Um, so I like starting off with a quote like this, right? So uh, I don't know if you, of course, you know who Bill Gates is. So basically, the first rule of technology is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency, right? And the second is that inefficiency will also be magnified. So the point of this is automation is something we use all the time, but before we do that, we got to make sure that the process is efficient. If it's not, it's going to make things worse, right? So we want to make sure that we understand what works for the brand and then automate that, right? Not start automation before we know what works. That's the point of this, right? I want to make that clear because nowadays I see that a lot of sellers are starting off using software, a lot of AI stuff out there. um, my background is in programming, so I understand like there's a use for it for sure. So I know it makes sense to automate things, but you got to make sure it's the right thing you automate. Um, I think there's a push for like buying software that the softwares out there are good, but they're only as good as the operator of the software, right? So if you don't know what systems work for your brand or product, then automation might even make it worse, right? So keep that in mind. So basically, you got to understand your brand, understand what works for it, and then automate as much as you possibly can. Okay. So let me start over here. That's not running. Okay. So yeah, I want to cover like basically my little background on me. I started, like I said, in 2016. And I was like a test engineer, avionics test engineer for 18 years. I did a lot of coding, a lot of programming. That's why I came into Amazon. I was like, wow, this is for me because it's a lot of data and numbers and all that stuff. So I quit in 2019 and also founded PPC Maestro. I'm the founder and CEO of it, right? And ever since we've been focusing on boosting profits for seven-figure brands, okay? And we do that with custom PPC systems, okay? Because not every brand is the same. Like I mentioned before, you got to understand what works for your brand and then automate what works and then remove everything else that's not working, okay? So this is a bit about me. So the presentation, like I mentioned, is going to be like very detailed way of how we've been launching products on Amazon. Okay, again, the example I'm going to show you here is based in a launch we did. I believe it was in September of last year, but we are still launching using the same strategy. Not for all brands. Okay, let me make that clear. Some brands, this is not going to work for them, right? What I would say before starting is this works best for niche products, right? Niche by niche, I'm saying if you have like a product that you really understand the market, right? It's kind of a smaller market. This is like ideal. And then it goes against even um, a lot of things that you're hearing out there where they say lower the price and then do this, do that. This space, you can launch at full price using this strategy, which makes it profitable quickly. Okay. And it takes about 30 days to make that profitable if the product selection is correct. Okay. So objective of this is to focus on teaching the algorithm how to rank your product, right? Basically, you're gonna teach the algorithm what the product is, and then you're gonna feed off of that because PPC helps you rank. But the idea of PPC at some point is to lower your ad spend. So organic ranking brings you money, profit, right? Not revenue, but profit. That's the point, right? The goal here, like I mentioned, is building organic ranking. And then you got to optimize as quickly as possible for profitability. So how we do that is, let me show you before. This is the launch we did. Let me see if I remember what date that was. Let's see. Okay. So near towards the week 40 of last year. Okay, so that's yeah, I guess September or so, somewhere there. So as you can see here, the graph, let me explain quickly what those mean. So the circle here is units sold, advertising cost is in red, and then net profit would be in the blue, right? So as you notice here, we launched in week 26, and notice how quickly we became profitable, right? Within 6 weeks, right? You can tell here, even here was already starting, but really starting to take off after week 6 over here, right? So 1, 2, 3, yeah, over here. So the point here is that if you're strategic with your launch, not only can you afford uh, the PPC because typically it's expensive, but if you go target, if you really target like highly relevant long-term, like long-tail keywords, then you have a higher probability of ranking quickly for it. So I hope you understand this. If there's any question about this, let me know before I move on. Just want to make sure you understand, because this is using a Sellerboard. I don't know if any one of you is using Sellerboard, but it's a software that I highly recommend, by the way. It's a software that you can track all your reporting. It pulls all the reports so you don't have to worry about anything. It's very affordable. I believe for this account, it's $30 a month, maybe 40, somewhere there. So it's very, very affordable. And go ahead, right? The whole process has to be tied to something that was accomplished. And this is the accomplishment of what we did. So I'm showing you the everything in the background here, which is, so again, this is like number one, like I mentioned before, if you don't have a good product, if your listing is not optimized, have you guys used, anyone here uses Data Dive at all? What about you, Charlie? You're using Data Dive or using Helium 10?
We mainly use Helium 10. We
Okay.
haven't used Data Dive, but very similar. Data Dive is pretty similar
Yeah,
as well.
right. I prefer Data Dive because I'm not I've used Helium 10 before. I don't know if they have. What we really like about Data Dive is the rank radar, where you could track ranking on a keyword level. I'm pretty sure Helium 10 has that. But yeah, the idea is to track ranking. That's the idea of us using Data Dive. I'm showing it here because that's what we use. That's what we've used for many years now, and it's working really well for us. So for those of you who don't know so you're probably not gonna understand the acronyms, but I'll just explain briefly, right? So MKL is like a master keyword list. So it's the same idea in Helium 10. You have 20 similar ASINs. You do a reverse ASIN on them, and you compare. This is what this is pretty much. So the master keyword list is like a combination of, you combine all the competitors, all the ones you can actually compete against, and then you come up with a list of highly relevant keywords that you believe you can rank for. That's what that is, right? That's what the master keyword list is. Okay. So once we do that, Data Dive, another reason we use it, because it's within the platform, which is not necessary, but it saves a lot of time because we launch a lot of products. We launch, for some brands, we launch, I would say like 100 SKUs every quarter, right? That's a lot of launches. So we need a way, like I mentioned before, if you have a system that works, we want to automate as much as possible of it. And this is one way we found that works well, because it's one platform where you could launch within the platform. You do your research. I don't think Helium 10 can do that. I don't think it launches campaigns, does it? I'm not sure. Maybe it does. But I like doing it because it's one platform where you analyze and you launch according to the data. Okay. So again, it's not necessary. It's just the way we enjoy it. We do it because it's faster and more efficient, right? So what to keep in mind here is that once you do set up the campaigns, we have a very strict manual research we do with the keywords. So they have to be, again, highly relevant. So we typically we look for like less than 50 of them we want to initially rank for, no more than that. Maximum 100 for, like if you have like a larger market, a lot of keywords come up, then you could go for like no more than 100, right? But we typically like it below 50 actually, like 30, 35, somewhere there, right? And then again, important thing is that you need reviews, as you all know, as conversion rate increases drastically when you have more reviews, obviously, right? So we start with Vine. Every launch, we don't do anything external at this point. For most brands, they don't need that because they're very niche, and it probably doesn't require any external traffic to rank them. But if you're doing supplements, that's a different story, right? This is like for, like I said, niche products that are not too competitive, right? Not for very competitive stuff. So we go for Vine, right? We get reviews quickly, and then we use seller board like you guys do to track KPIs, right? We track tacos, we track ACoS, we track sales and conversion rate, all that stuff, right? So next thing is, since you guys are not familiar with data dive, so this is a slide where it tells you it's exactly the same as Helium 10 in that sense. I believe data dive gives you more. I think there's a cap in Helium 10. You can only use 15 ASINs. I believe data dive, you can do as much as 50 similar products. So it gives you a bigger data set to analyze. I think it's 15 or 20 for Helium 10. But anyways, the idea is the same. You just group them up and you have a list, and then you find the ones that make sense. You remove the branded keywords, obviously, right? Which is, so this is like overall on how data dive works, right? So basically, like we look at, like we like going here. Like if you do a manual keyword research, you type the keyword on the search bar. You probably sometimes would need to go a little bit deeper than that. So that's why we use like the sub category here. So sometimes this is great. You go subcategory, you have a list of all your competitors, and you can select them right off the bat right there. So this is another way to look for them quickly. So once you do have that, so this is important because once you have, I think Helium 10 has that probably, you remove branded keywords here. So you're not going to rank for them, obviously. So you remove these, and then you come up, this is the part that I really like about Helium 10, Data Dive. It's called the rank radar, right? So here are the keywords, and here it gives you like daily ranking. Again, that stuff is not accurate. We all know it's not accurate, but it's a good indication of what's going on, right? Don't expect to search that keyword and then find it at position 6. It doesn't work that way because it depends on your location. It depends on a lot of different things, right? But what matters is you want to see progression towards page 1, which is what the green stuff is, right? So initially you might have something like this. Those mean when it says like 101, it means you're not even indexed. So it's probably not even related to your product. So these you forget, you ignore. The ones you want to really pay attention to is the ones that, that are from 1, obviously, to, I would say, like 35 or so. Meaning, depends on what you're looking at, right? Like web or, mobile or desktop. But I would say like the first 38 or 35 spots, right, will give you page 1. This is what matters for organic ranking. So I like the way they have organic versus paid. Right? This is impression share, meaning paid traffic. So you have paid versus organic. Any questions on this? So we're good?
Yep, we're good.
Sorry, really quick.
Oh,
You mentioned like mobile versus web.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I didn't realize that you would rank differently on each platform. Does this tell you where you rank on each one?
No, I don't believe it does, but it's something to keep in mind because mobile, you have less real estate, obviously, right? So,
Yes.
but I think the rule of thumb is like you don't want to go lower than 35 or 40, somewhere there, right?
Okay.
If you fall on page 2, then nobody's gonna really look at your product pretty much. For rank at phase 1, like I call this one initially. Afterwards, it's okay, but for now, we want to be on page 1. So
Okay.
yeah, I would say like 38 or so, somewhere there. That's a really good question. I wish they could like different. I don't know if there's a way they could do that though. I'm not sure. Because the data, I guess they could. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That would be a cool addition for sure. Like, good question, Susan. Very good. I like that. But yeah, we go by like 38 or so. We want to make sure it's turning green. That's what we're looking for, like either light or dark green, right? Make sense? Okay, so let's see, next one. All right, so again, this is like specifically for data dive. Again, it's not, you could do this using the bulk sheet or whatever automation you're using. But the idea is to launch product. This is like a very important thing, I believe, right? A lot of people group campaigns in any way. This is like, I think one of the biggest mistakes I see is that they don't group the campaigns according to not even search volume, but actually relevancy or root. What this thing, what Data Dive calls the root keyword. Root is like a similar uh, root of the word, right? These typically perform the same. So you want to group them together because if you have something, let's say tennis shoes for men, right? And then you have tennis shoes for women in the same campaign. This is like an extreme example, but you don't want to mix both of them in the same campaign. That's what I'm saying. Because they're going to perform a tennis pair of shoes for men is not typically going to convert for a woman, obviously, right? So that stuff you keep in mind and then group them accordingly. That's what Data Dive really helps with. But you could do this manually, obviously, right? But it takes like a lot more work. Like I said, it takes more time. And this gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of bid selection and then how to group them and then bidding strategy, all that stuff. Saves a lot of time. Yeah, we typically use this and launch the campaigns we need within 2 minutes. That's it. I think if you did this manually, it'd probably take you an hour or two, somewhere there. Okay, so let me, again, so the way we launch products is separate in phases. So the phase 1 is where we go, like I mentioned, for relevance, meaning we want to make sure the algorithm understands what we're selling and then ranks us accordingly for these, right? So like I mentioned before, we only use exact match campaigns because these are the ones that rank, right? That helps ranking. Not the other ones don't, but these have a higher impact on ranking because they're very specific. Typically, they are lower volume, right? Because they're longer tail keywords, and they're in exact match. So you pay more, but you rank faster using these. Okay. Again, like I mentioned, you got to group them by root. This is like really, really important. You can think of root as different ways of calling the product. You can call it as intent. Like the intent depends on the product you're selling, right? If it's made for um, let's say barbecue, right? That would be the intent. Outdoor cooking would be like something they buy for that purpose, that intent, right? So you could, the root is like not something specific, but it's like, why are they buying it? The purpose of it, okay? So we like this a lot. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about this, how many targets you can have in a campaign. At the end of the day, you don't want too much, right? So since we have automation, we limit everything to 10. Is it necessary? Not always, right? But we do it because we can. It's faster and it's not a big deal, right? We want to make sure we're proactive with this. So we want to make sure that not one target eats up all the budget if you add too many targets in one campaign. So limiting them by 10 is a perfect, I think, balance. For launches, we use dynamic bid down, okay? We start at 10. You can even go lower than that. I won't go lower than 8, for example, because typically that's probably going to run out of budget. So I would say a minimum of 10 per day, per campaign, right? Like you mentioned, Charlie, the budget is set at the campaign level and then the account does what it does. But having only 20, 30 targets, it's not going to cost that much money, as you can tell, right? So the way we do it, we have like, we launch, again, this is only strictly sponsored products. We don't use anything We don't use sponsored brands, sponsored brand video. There are times that we might, but in general, we don't, because it depends on if the product needs the customer to be educated, then yeah, video might make sense. But typically, we only use sponsored products in exact match. And then we also use a sponsored product targeting campaign. And these are like extremely important. They do really, really well if selected correctly. You got to select the products that you know you have a competitive advantage over, right? It could be not just in price. I don't like to compare price because price is basically it's a commodity, right? You don't want to be the lowest price. I like having the lowest value so that you could charge more. So in this case, this brand here, we didn't lower the price of the product at all. It was selling for $49.99. That's the launch price and the end price. So we started at $49.99, we ended at $49.99. So going back to product targeting, you want to have a small list of competitors. It could be like 10 or 20, so 10 to 20, somewhere there. 15 typically is what we use. And again, you got to have a reason why people will buy yours versus somebody else, right? So you want to make sure that you have a competitive advantage. And then the bids, you got to keep the bids low because you don't, remember at this stage here, most likely you don't have any reviews, you just sign up for Vine. You got to bid conservatively, right? You don't want to overspend on bids, but you don't want to underspend as well. So you basically got to manually adjust every couple of days or so, and then adjust to see what the data tells you. So if you see you get like a conversion and the CPC is really low, then you could increase it by like 10, 20%, right? It's a manual thing. You can't, there's no automation at this point. It's all manually done. And that's where experience comes in. You got to look at the data, understand what to tweak, what makes sense. Okay.
At the product level, you mentioned at the product level, I have a question.
Sure.
When you're looking at a client's product that they want to launch, what are like the 3 questions you ask them regarding their product that let you know that, hey, this product works really well if we run, the campaign on it with money behind it? What are like 3 questions? It's just so that we kind of get into that same mindset that you have, right? You're identifying a winner.
Yes, that's a fantastic question, Charlie. So the question I would ask, number one, why would someone buy your product versus someone else's? What are you offering that's better? Why should they pick your product? I think that's probably number one. The other thing I would say, because I have like a pretty close relationship with the founders of the brands, so we basically think alike. I think that's great. We discuss basically the product selection process, the way, because they're the founder. Me, I'm the PPC guy, right? They understand the market better than I do. So I have to rely on their sense of business to tell me that, hey, this is going to work, right? But when I see the product, I know if it's a good product or not. You see the images are like on point. The listing has to be like perfect. You have to have better listings than your competitors, period. You just got to beat them in perceived value, right? But the point is that it's not just how it looks, it's how good the product is as well. So it's a combination of both. So yeah, I would say like number one question, why would they buy this product versus someone else's? In this case, I cannot show you the product, unfortunately, but I can tell you that it is superior in listing. The listing is like top notch. I mean, it was an expensive, I guess, in the front end of it. You got to invest money in like top tier photography. The keyword research was awesome. The owner himself did the keyword research because he's been using Data for years, so he knows how to use it. The photography is something it outsources to like a very specialized agency that does that really, really well, really good stuff. And then, yeah, the reason why they buy because it looks not only better, it just functions better. Period. Right? That's it. That's all there is to it. You give them something that's better and looks better. If it looks better, it's perceived as better, but you gotta deliver on the promise too, right? So yeah, you just gotta do better, huh?
The product quality as well, essentially.
Quality was like we got it was 4.9 ratings. The first 5-10 reviews were like at 4.9, somewhere there. So yeah, good product. This is not something typically you get as your first launch, right? You need some experience in how you make the product as that good, right? But yeah, it's a learning curve, obviously. You have to understand the market really well. So yeah, really good question, Charlie. I like it. Good. Excellent. Okay, so now I talked about phase one. Now phase two is you move on. You want to stay in phase one as long as you see the progression here. You see we started not even indexing and it started moving in the right direction. So basically, again, look at like the green stuff. That's what we're looking for. We want to make sure that we rank. Look at the relevancy of those keywords. Like the higher they are, the better we're ranking for them. Especially not this one. See, this one, even if has a low relevancy, we're still ranking for it. So the point is that you want to make sure that your main keywords, and here we only have 52 of them. So for this product, we pick 52 targets. So for these, we want to make sure that they're moving in the right direction, meaning from red over here, and it's moving towards light yellow, whatever the color is, to green, right? So it means like it's moving towards ranking on page one for the most important targets, right? Any questions on this? And one more thing is look at the search volume. It's not much, right? They're highly relevant but low search term stuff. It's because these are easier to rank for, obviously, right? So you got to position the product in a way that you can rank and outcompete your competitors on the lower search volume keywords. I hope that makes sense. That makes sense to you, Charlie?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So when we're getting into, like, let's say the niche, right? The customer's actual search intent that they want to buy, the overall volume isn't always going to be like at 1,000.
Yes.
Right? You don't have to stress that it's at 1,000, but if they are highly intended for a purchase,
Exactly.
and very long tail keyword, 200, 100 volume is enough per day. And is this per day, or is this over a certain week, or the search volume? What we're looking at
This
here?
is typically it's the monthly search volume.
Monthly. Okay.
Monthly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's monthly.
So we're talking about like maybe 10 search, 20 search per day on that specific long tail keyword. So that's enough if we're talking about on a daily.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, it's not low. It's not a high volume thing. It's just like to be competitive, you got to limit. Yeah, you don't want to go against the big boys, of course, because you don't have any proof of concept yet, right? I'll show you. This is like the initial stage, right? The next stage we could go after the bigger keywords, but for this stage, again, the priority number one here is ranking organically as quickly as possible for the highest relevant targets, which are like 50 of those guys. Okay. So again, these are only exact match targets, only exact. And and you have a targeting that helps with ranking as well. So it's only these two. So typically it's like 10 to 15 campaigns where we broke them down by 10 targets each. And then we have our product targeting campaign, and that's it.
And is this within the initial 6 weeks, or what's the time frame here right now that you're seeing?
Time frame, if you look at here, I believe that's the first couple weeks. So each phase is like, from day one to like a week or a week and a half, somewhere there. Typically we wait. I'll show you basically when. So when you see this, it could last longer, right? It depends on how long it takes you to see that type of movement. If you don't see it, then you cannot move to phase two because you're not ranking organic well enough, right? That's the point. So the idea is to look at the whole keyword list and see if the majority of them are moving in the right direction in page one. If they are, then you can move to phase two. If they're not, you stay there, because if you go broader, your conversion rate is going to drop and you're not going to rank anymore. You're going to probably rely too much on PPC, which you don't want, right? So you want organic ranking right off the bat within the first couple of weeks. Okay, good. So again, like I mentioned, extremely important to stay in that phase if you're not moving in the right direction. And that goes with the reviews as well, right? As we know, we wait for reviews. You stay there because reviews has a very high impact on conversion rate, as you know, right? And we not only look for a number, we look for a rating as well. I would probably change this to like 4.2 to be safer, right? You want to have high, really high ranking. I mean, high rating. 4.0 is probably the minimum. I would change that to 4.2 for my next presentation. Yeah, I want to make sure that they rank really, really well and people like the product, and then move to phase 2. Okay. Again, if something is not working on the product, do not move past this phase. You gotta wait. Sometimes you could be unfortunate. Some people just they like to complain. You know that people complain. They get a product that's good, but they always find a way to complain, right? And unfortunately, the algorithm favors negative reviews, right? As you know, if you get like one bad review, it hurts more than like 5 good reviews, right? It would probably take like 3 or 4 good reviews to actually level out that bad one, which is a pain, but that's the way it is. So again, here is that if you know your product is good, wait for more reviews. If it takes 10, 20 reviews, you gotta get that rating up, obviously. If you like below 3.9, somewhere there, I would not push PPC because the conversion rate tanks when that happens. So you're gonna pay a lot more for the clicks, and it's not gonna convert as well. So yeah, it's definitely worth just waiting for those. Make sure that this is, and if it doesn't happen, then the market rejected the product. You know, it happens. But I would not push past if that's a strict rule that we have. We do not move on until we know that the product is well accepted by the market. Okay. So now phase 2, next couple of weeks or so, is when the same keywords we launch in exact. That's when we don't harvest anything at this stage. We use the exact keywords and we launch them in different match types. We launch them in broad and phrase. Okay. And then here, I think one thing I did not mention here is that there's a way to when you launch, let's say broad, right? You want to make sure negative exact the exact stuff in the broad. We do that just to make sure we have the right, all the impressions go towards one group of campaign or one target, right? So for example, if we have, yeah, I'm just coming up with something here. Let's say you have running shoes for men, right? So you would have running shoes for men, negative exact in your broad campaign, because the exact one already has that. So you don't want to mix match. You don't want impressions going different places. That's the point. You want to make sure you funnel them in the right direction to understand the data better. Okay. So here, basically, it's a lot of manual stuff. You got to look at the budgets. You got to look at, again, budget. Again, we don't know exactly why. We just launch at $10 per campaign, and 10 minimum 8, I would say, probably minimum 8 and 10 somewhere there. And then you want to make sure that since you already have reviews, now you can go a little bit more aggressive with the bids, right? So we go about 85% of the suggested, if it's not too crazy. This is like a manual thing you got to do, because sometimes the suggested is like way out of proportion, right? I've seen suggested bids be as high as like $40 sometimes. You believe that? A CPC is 40 and we're converting at about 350 for a product. So if you go by suggested, you're going to outspend big time. So it's a manual thing. You got to, basically, if you're selling a $40 product, you don't want to spend $10 for a click, obviously, right? So it's kind of a judgment call here. But
what's the reason? So what's the reason why suggested is always a higher?
My guess, the algorithm favors spending money. That's what it's for, right? So I'm not saying they do that deliberately, but I think it's based on. I don't think it's based on the market because there's no way someone is gonna spend $45 for a click. So what I think is, it just comes up with that number to make people spend money. That's what I think, because it doesn't make sense at $45. That doesn't mean you're gonna pay that 45, right? But why does it come up with 45? I don't know really. That's why you gotta really pay attention to whatever the suggested is. Typically, we have a cap, right? Huh?
Yeah, no, we have media buyers on Facebook and Google as well that I worked with in the past when I was running ads for Shopify, outside of Amazon. And we get suggested like bid and suggested campaign, and you're like, that don't make sense. Why are we paying that much, right?
It's outrageous. Yeah, I've seen 45. That's the highest I've seen. I mean, that's ridiculous. $45.
Yeah.
And I know it converts for like 250, 350, somewhere there. So 45 is, yeah, the algorithm again the intent of it is to make you get clicks. It doesn't care if you're profitable. It wants you to click so that they get money. That's it. And that's a reality, right? That's how Bezos is so rich, right? Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that's the truth, right? But yeah, it is a great platform though, so we can't complain, right? You just gotta be careful.
I just wanted you to kind of explain why, so that when we are, for everyone here, right, running campaigns, make sure you pay attention.
Yes,
do
you
not
gotta pay
just
attention to it.
don't go the easy route and just like, okay, suggest it, all right.
No, suggested could be lethal. It could be lethal. So I probably should add typically we have like a cap, for example. Let's say we kind of understand the maximum we're gonna pay for something. So if this happens to be less than the cap, then we let it go. If not, then we use the cap, right? So let's say you don't want to spend more than 150 per click. That would be your cap. So if 85% of the suggested comes out to less than 1.5, then you let it go, pretty much, right? But yeah, the idea is make sure that you do manually verify this, because sometimes it's crazy stuff. Okay, so phase two, like I mentioned, sometimes we launch with video stuff, depending on how needed it is, right? Does it educate? Is it a product that needs education? If you need to educate the buyer, then yeah, video campaigns do really well. Okay. And then this is like really, I love doing that, especially for like bigger brands that have like they're launching a lot of campaign products. We have like a really low bid catch-all campaign where we structure it per every SKU or ASIN would have its own ad group, but the bids are very low, right? So typically, if your CPC is, let's say, 50 cents, we would like cut that in half, so use 25, something like that, but really low. The point of that is to not only do keyword research, but get you cheap sales, right? That's the point of it. Again, not all. If you're launching 2 or 3 campaign products, then yeah, it's not gonna make sense. But if you're launching a lot, this is like a big lever for sure. Okay, so again, there's like guardrails for sure. You wanna make sure you don't move too fast to the phases. So the last phase, phase 3, again, you see movement on page 1, and at this point, you should have a minimum of 10 reviews, and they definitely should be over 4.0, 4.0 plus. Okay, and then that's when you start like lowering your tacos and ACoS, right? And then at this point, typically when you launch, your tacos is going to be higher, of course, right? So that's the point. You want to make sure that you have somewhere a split between the two, like 50% makes sense. Initially, you might have more, obviously, because you're spending, most of the sales are coming from PPC. So the paid side is going to be higher than the organic side. But at this stage here, you want to make sure you start balancing them out. And then after that, you're just basically maximizing for profitability. Okay, and then there you launch. What we do here is that we use like a process of, we call it expansion, but it's basically keyword harvesting. Whatever campaigns are in the research campaigns that are performing, whatever keywords are performing, we extract them. We don't pause them. We test them in all the different match types. So all the longer tail stuff, pretty much. We just spread them and then we launch new campaigns with them. Same strategy, pretty much. You don't want to have more than 10 targets in each. Sometimes we even go lower than that. Sometimes we even break them up in single keyword campaigns. Depends on how much traffic the keyword gets, right? The point to remember is that the more granular you are with your structure, the better you can control budget, bids, and placements. Okay, so you want to make sure that at the end of the day, you analyze the data and then segregate them according to search volume and conversion rate. And then you need, like I said, here is the point. This is where you start incorporating automation, because you know what works now. You have the data, the product is profitable. Then you can like come up with a schedule, an optimization schedule, using any tool you want at that stage, right? Not before. No tools before that stage. And yeah, I mean, that stuff is like minimal. You got to do pretty much. You got to make sure you don't have keywords that have a lot of clicks and don't convert. And you want to make sure you keep high ACoS campaigns under check. Okay. So what we recommend is something like this. So again, this is the manual way of doing it. There are automations you can use, but basically you got to do this on a weekly or bi-weekly, depending on what works for your brand, how much volume you get, what type of feedback you get from the data. So again, here I put like between 8 and 10 with the asterisk here, meaning number of clicks you got to wait for depends on your conversion rate at that stage, right? So if you see that you're converting at 10%, then obviously you want to wait for 10 clicks, okay? And then adjust your bid accordingly. Any questions so far? No? We're good? I mean, this is like basic stuff that you guys probably already doing, right? So again, why does this work? It works mainly because of the organic ranking. We aim right off the bat, we go for that. We make sure that we rank organically for the highest relevant keywords first, okay? And then basically the data tells you at that point. It works because data tells you that it's gonna work, and it does work. The data doesn't lie at this stage. So a week recap for everything. Then again, I really emphasize this a lot because I mean, we used to launch with all match types. And this one is the one that got us the quickest result by going specifically for exact match campaigns as phase one, and then gradually expanding to broad, phrase, and exact, and the other type of advertising. So after you do that, then you can optimize for profitability, which is like usually if the product is on point, everything is high quality, then within 30 days you should be profitable for sure. As long as you monitor the right KPIs, meaning organic ranking, you got to monitor TACoS, ACoS, conversion rate, and then you adjust accordingly. So that's it.
If you've made it this far, you now have a clear roadmap to launching with PPC. But data-driven launches aren't a set and forget process. You need to analyze, optimize, and adapt. If you want to refer back to this strategy later, I've put together a detailed PDF. You'll find it in the description below, so go grab it. If you found this valuable, make sure you subscribe, because in my next video, I'll cover the #1 mistake sellers make when launching a product with PPC. You do not want to miss it. That is it, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time. Bye for now.